Hello, thank you so much for joining us on today's live stream. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Jeff Reichard on Veeam's product strategy team, and we have a great session for you today. We're going to talk about an announcement that Veeam just made, an enhancement to our Veeam Data Cloud backup for Microsoft 365. I'm joined today by Patrick Anderson, who is uniquely qualified to talk about this subject based on his experience. And Patrick, I'll let you intro yourself to our audience today.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, happy to join and happy to be here. Patrick Anderson, and I'm our solution engineering leader for our Veeam Data Cloud focused on Microsoft 365. And here to join Jeff and talk about some of the new advancements and capabilities in the offering and what that means for a lot of our customers.
Now, the reason that you're in that role here is that you yourself, Patrick, have a pretty extensive background with Microsoft and with cloud technologies. Can you walk our listeners through a little bit of what your technical background is before you came to Veeam?
Yeah, sure, certainly. I spent some years at RSA Security and working on security solutions for enterprise customers. And then many years at Microsoft, probably nearly 16 years there in strategy roles, doing security and infrastructure and management technologies, and working with a number of different industry, education, state and local government, healthcare, and some of our largest enterprise customers in the Northwest area where I'm based. And oversaw some very large deployments of Azure, of Office and M365 and that whole suite, from kind of origination to full deployment and training and then servicing and backup and all those types of requirements that companies have. So, happy to be here at Veeam, back to my roots around security and management. And it's an exciting time to be here as the company is pivoting towards cloud offering and taking some of our best of breed solutions to cloud. So it's exciting to see what we're doing, as well as the partnership with Microsoft and what's going on there.
Well, I'm delighted to have you join us. Now, for those who are watching today's live stream, we always ask you to be interactive. Please don't hesitate to put any questions or comments that you have about our conversation today in the chat platform on whatever platform you're viewing us from. If you have questions, we will try to get to them during the live stream. We'll be monitoring those. Also, as always, we will have our interactive map. So do put in wherever you happen to be joining us from, and we will take a short break a couple of times to look at that and to let you know where your fellow viewers are joining us from for today's live stream. So, if you watch Industry Insights, that we like grounding these conversations in what we're hearing from you. And one of the ways that we do that is by referencing Veeam's research. We're going to start by looking at a really basic question from this year's Cloud Protection Trends Survey. Basically, what we asked them is if there's something that you could do different in your cloud-based backup services, what would you do? Patrick, can you walk us through some of the answers that we've got here? What some of the top line lessons are from this?
Yeah, I think clearly some of the large enterprise offerings that are SaaS, Office, Salesforce, you name those applications. Customers are looking for better protection in terms of having availability of that data for e-discovery, for better retention, for compliance, for a number of different things. Looking for better resiliency and attack surface profiles across these different offerings. Recovery, better RPO points, support and service, and how we can support those different offerings and provide the best experience for, usability for users, but also for maintaining those systems and uptime and monitoring. And then also, I would say, plugging into security systems and event monitoring, which is so important today.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the interesting things for me from these takeaways is we obviously the numbers here don't add up to 100. You were allowed to choose more than one thing in here. And if you look, there's a pretty wide spread of requirements that people have, and the percentages are not that far apart, even going from things that might on the surface seem as divergent as protecting SaaS platforms at 23% of respondents down to adding tape as part of the service at 17%. Okay, that's a lower number, but it's not maybe as much lower as you might expect if we're talking about cloud data protection and cloud native services. One of the things we've seen consistently in this research, and this is true not just for the 2024 report, but over the last couple of years, is that in particular, when organizations have moved their production workloads to software as a service, like Microsoft 365, like Salesforce, like other popular SaaS platforms, they really want to consume the backups for those platforms in the same manner. There's a strong desire, and it's reflected here in the data. 23%, the highest number that we had, were keen to get a SaaS product, a SaaS backup solution for their SaaS production. Patrick, I'm glad that you mentioned security and compliance, because if you look, 2 of the top 4 answers listed here also relate to cybersecurity, because as we know from talking with customers and also from our research, cloud assets, cloud services also get hit in cyber attacks. So it's important to think about those and fold them into your planning. And especially as the compliance landscape gets more demanding, as we see regulations like the new CIRCIA regulations that are going to affect 16 critical industries here in the United States, rolling out, the ability to report accurately on what's happened to you in a cyber incident, the ability to comply with the reporting guidelines that regulation and other regulatory schemes will be putting forward, becomes really, really important. Let's dig a little bit more into the data. When we asked in this year's Data Protection Trends report, if you have business continuity and disaster recovery solution today, what's the primary way that you do it, and how do you foresee that changing? And the nice thing about the fact that we've done this research for years is that, Patrick, as you can see here, we have a pretty good running list of answers around this, including answers around, for the next couple of years, where do you think you'll be in 2025 and where do you think you'll be in 2026? Can you unpack a little bit of what we're seeing in the trend lines here?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one, especially as you start to look at 23 to current. And you think about our transition to cloud as customers are getting out of their data centers, migrating to cloud, a lot of those workloads that are just aging or expiring, or where they can better provide, cost of services for users. And then the flex maybe of hybrid cloud and the eruption of AI, bringing some of that back to the edge. But I think in large here, we're seeing, a strong need to take that, BCDR scenario and data recovery into the cloud. And, this is, I think, based on a, 2-year anticipation of customers where they think they're moving, I believe. And so, I think that's really telling of, where we're headed to 2026, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we don't get answers from 100% of the folks that we survey about these questions. You can see the percentages of respondents that we've got over on the right. But what's really telling for me when I look at this is just in 2020, I was already working at Veeam in 2020 when these numbers came out. And back then, the majority of folks were saying we have multiple self-managed data centers. That's how we do business continuity and DR. 30% responded that. Just over 23% responded that we were doing it to cloud or DR as a service. If you then fast forward up to 2 years from now, the response that we got in this year's survey, the response that are going to be doing it in the cloud is more than doubled. So if you wonder why Veeam has gone in this direction, if you wonder why we support our service provider partners so much, if you wonder why we have rolled out a first-party data protection as a service in the Veeam Data Cloud, this is the reason why. We hear loud and clear in customer calls, and we hear loud and clear in our research that the direction that organizations want to go is increasingly to letting somebody else manage their backups, letting someone else manage their disaster recovery initiatives. And it makes sense. I've been doing this, Patrick, for over 25 years. And there are very few CIOs who get up in the morning when they go into their office and say, today it will be a good day if I just take a good backup, right? That's not what they're solving for. You need to do it, but that's not the main thing. And if you can get somebody you can trust to do it for you, that's a win all around. I'm really excited that we have so many folks that are participating today. Let's cut to the map, and we will give a shout out to all the people that we have joining from around the world. Here in the United States, we have folks dialed in from Ohio. We have folks in Connecticut, at least me and maybe others. Also in Washington State, that's Patrick and possibly others, and in Texas and California. In Europe, we have folks who have joined us from the UK, Greece, Poland, and Italy. Thank you so much for our European viewers from being on today. If we cut down back to the Americas, down to South America, we have someone who has dialed in, or multiple people who've dialed in from Argentina. I was actually in Buenos Aires just last month, and it was beautiful. So thank you very much for joining us. Love to see you on. If we cut over to Africa right now, we have folks who are dialed in from South Africa. And if we then switch all the way over to APAC, and we can stay on this slide because it shows it, we have folks who have joined us today from India and from Pakistan. So thank you very much for dialing into our live stream. If you have not recorded in the chat platform on your platform where you're joining from, please go ahead and do that. We will update the map, and we'll have one more update for the map as we go through today's talk. So Patrick, let's talk a little bit about the background to the announcement that we made about our product this year. Veeam and Microsoft have been partnering for a long time, haven't we?
Yeah, and I think this is telling here, right? 15 years of that in the works, and Microsoft Gold partner, I think for many years. First with our product offering, certified on Teams. The most recent, or not the most recent, but one of the key pieces that we'll get into today and unpack is really the announcement around the Microsoft Backup Storage API and how that we're integrating that, as a strategic partner with Microsoft and offering that as part of our platform. And then the most recent is really, a 5-year strategic agreement that we signed and focused on, data and AI technologies. And that's exciting to think about if you look at our platform and some of the use cases that we're starting to build and further into the roadmap, what that really means and how that impacts and what that will all extrapolate to through, our platforms. It's exciting.
Fantastic. So you mentioned this is a perfect segue because you mentioned that we were a launch partner for Microsoft 365 Backup Storage back in November of last year. And in fact, we have some things that we're announcing about that that we've just announced that we've come out with. Can you talk about the announcement and what we have now brought to market around integration with Microsoft Storage?
Yeah, so at high level, Microsoft's offered a traditional API to, connect to their platform, for vendors or for even end user customers through the Office application. It has some limitations and bandwidth restrictions, for getting that data in and out. As a lot of customers have realized, for compliance, better data protection against ransomware, or even disaster recovery scenarios, when you're in the cloud with Office, you get 30 to 90 days really for, data protection and those backups, which is for many of our customers not enough. So as we go to solutions like Veeam offers to give you, up to unlimited, backup retention, for example, we leverage those APIs. And the new API that is available is I think Microsoft really addressing, the severity of ransomware, but also an opportunity to provide disaster recovery for these services within Office in a new way. And so what Veeam's done with Microsoft, I think they've recognized us as a strategic partner and one of the best in class providing a service like this. We are, embedding that API technology into our platform and offering another layer of protection, essentially, that provides more than, data protection against ransomware. It really provides the ability to provide BCDR type recovery for those Office services. And how we're doing that is essentially in a licensing model under one pane of glass that will allow customers to use kind of our traditional product, which we'll call Flex in terms of a license, with the new offering and that API, which we're calling Express. And then the ability to use both of those together, and we'll talk about what that means, in a license called Premium for perhaps user sets or objects or things that need that kind of protection.
Well, why don't we go ahead to that now, and then we can talk sort of about what it's going to offer for customers who adopt that in just a minute. So let's unpack this a little bit more so that folks can get a visual about what exactly we're talking about when we talk about Express, Flex, and Premium in terms of the offering.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah, so you can build this out, but essentially what you see across the top is that new Express functionality. So it's covering the services of Exchange, SharePoint, and OneDrive. It does not cover Teams at this time. However, the traditional Microsoft or Veeam Data Cloud product within Flex does cover Teams. So the two together provide protection for all four of those services. Lightning fast backups, when we're talking about large environments, this is also very interesting to think about, customers with, 5,000 plus users in their population. The traditional API for an initial backup set can be really challenging, as well as being able to restore quickly. So this is where we're seeing a dramatic change, backup initially, because it doesn't leave the Microsoft 365 tenant in this situation. Those backups are almost instantaneous or within an hour or two to establish the backup. Restore is 2 to 5 terabytes per hour versus leveraging with Flex, maybe a terabyte to 2 terabytes per day in terms of restoration. Now we'll get into the differences in a moment, but the main thing there is really fast backup and restore for those three services is capable. More granular level, down to the file level, is capable with Flex and covering all four services. As I should mention, the fast backup is really up to 1 year, whereas the Flex product is really unlimited, so it could cover those 5 to 7-year retention periods without any issue.
Yeah, this is excellent. Talk a little bit about Restore and about the locations that you can choose, if you don't mind, Patrick.
Yeah, so that's a good point. Both of these leverage Microsoft's cloud and that security and resiliency built into that. The Veeam Data Cloud, of course, is in our own cloud, where you as a customer would have, your own partition and fully secure container within that Azure platform in a region of your choice. So perhaps for GDPR, for regional needs, you want a second copy located somewhere else. With our product within Flex allows you to provision that storage location, wherever you choose. The Express functionality really resides wherever your M365 tenant exists today for that lightning fast backup.
Right, so right. There's nothing free. The reason that it's so lightning fast is that the backup storage is proximate to wherever the services are actually running, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to think about it. Yeah.
Yep, that makes sense. Now, what interests me about the Flex offering, and it's something that I've heard repeatedly from customers in highly regulated industries and frankly from the public sector customers I've worked with. And I know, Patrick, you've been in the same boat supporting public sector customers. There are
Yeah.
a lot of organizations who, for security or compliance reasons, or because they have to be respondent to FOIA requests, or because it's a matter of law or legislation in whatever municipality they're in, they have to maintain long-term copies of official communications and government records, and email is included in that category more often than not. And they also frequently have to retain those for a long time. If there are contract disputes, or if, for example, I've talked with state governments where litigation around highway safety is extremely common, and you can have discovery requests that say, share all the emails from the people who were involved in planning this overpass or planning this curve in the interstate, so that we know if there were safety issues that were voiced or tabled at the time, and we can respond appropriately in law. Those requirements often mandate, both for cost reasons, but also for sort of custody of data reasons, that you have the ability to save data in locations outside of the cloud. And Patrick, I'll bring up another reason to argue for the ability to save data within Azure, but in a different tenant. Something that we've mentioned lately, and I expect you followed it too, in some industry conversations that we've had, doesn't actually relate to Microsoft, and it's a success story. But for those of you who are watching who may not have seen this, there was actually a pretty significant data loss for a government entity. This was in Australia. It was an organization called UniSuper, that's an Australian pension fund. Patrick, I'll pause. Did you follow this news when it happened back at the beginning of May? Did you see the Google Cloud loss? Or oh, I think you're on mute, sir. Have we got you back? Nope. Uh-oh. Well, Patrick, I'm going to let you work on that, and I'll just follow up on the theme of the UniSuper cloud loss right now. For those of you that didn't see it, um, the Australian pension fund, with about $135 billion under management, over 600,000 users, actually had a data loss incident. It was a misconfiguration that caused their entire tenant to be deleted back at the beginning of May. And if they had not had backups out of their tenant, which they did, they would have suffered a pretty significantly long outage, and they would have been in a situation where they were trying to reconstruct over 500,000 pension funds and map the owners to different assets. They didn't lose any of the money, but they lost all of the account structure that told whose money was whose. And so fortunately, they had a backup out of the tenant. We hear that kind of requirement from folks to have a backup either fully out of the cloud to another cloud, or to have a backup out of their primary tenant all the time. And the wonderful thing about the UniSuper data loss is that it's actually a success story. They were required to have a backup out of their tenant. They did, and it let them recover fairly rapidly in under 2 weeks from a really major disaster, which is why when we bring solutions like this to market, we want to give you the option, if you want, to go out of the cloud that you're in. Now, Patrick, have we got you back yet?
I think so. Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're back.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. I will cut quickly to the map, and then I want to talk about some more use cases with you. We'll cut back to talking about what you're hearing from customers. So for folks who are looking here in North America, we have added Utah and Florida. So thank you to the folks who've joined in on today's live stream. And cutting over to Europe, we have more folks who have joined us from both Portugal and from Romania. So thank you for dialing into the live stream. I mentioned that we would talk about any comments that we got, and I'm very pleased to see the feedback from Kevin in the UK. Kevin notes, I've been using Veeam since version 5, and it's an amazing product. Thank you, Kevin. We love the props. I've been using Veeam since 9.5. I came here about 5 years ago, so really great to hear such a long-term user. I also see that you added that you all use a 3-2-1 backup model, which our regular viewers have heard a lot about that model, and grandfather father son backups with immutability to protect against ransomware. So Kevin, you are clearly showing a lot of best practices with your Veeam backups, and kudos for that. We're delighted to see it. So let's round out a little bit the things, Patrick, that we're hearing from customers about that led us basically to roll this out. What are the kind of requirements that drove the changes that we announced in our backup solution this week?
Yeah, I think, the ability to provide real disaster recovery and continuity scenarios around these Office services and this API. And I think Microsoft clearly is addressing that and offering this as an API for customers to be able to take in and get this kind of protection that they need. It'll be interesting to see, kind of how this plays out and how our clients actually use the technology. And our vision around this is, a lot of customers have a blend of recovery and continuity solutions today, and potentially security solutions in place for monitoring and event tracking and things like that. And the console that we're going to provide really provides a comprehensive solution for all of that, right? And to plug in really nicely to existing security solutions and SIMs that are in place. I can see large customers now taking a look at the SaaS offering seriously and, doing the math and saying, this definitely is going to fit our needs. We can go establish an immediate backup of our data in hours and be fully protected. I was just speaking with a customer last week that had a ransomware scare. They recovered, and we were going to connect them with our incident response management team that deals with ransomware scenarios. And they were able to recover, but now, of course, they want a solution in place immediately. Well, that wasn't really possible before this offering. So they're going to be one of the first to jump on as we launch here, within days, to establish that immediate backup. But also they're going to have needs of user groups based on geographical locations that have, longer retention periods necessary. They want the more granular recovery of file level. And so, as we build up that secondary backup set for them over time, because they're 50,000 users, that will take a little bit of time. We still are providing that initial immediate protection. So I think there's a lot of different scenarios that come into play, and it'll be fun and fascinating to see how this technology changes how customers are using Veeam.
I really love the fact that we made the announcement back in November when Microsoft announced they'd be bringing the service to market. They make the APIs fully available to the public, make this capability available at the end of July, and the first week in August, we are announcing the solution right there in lockstep with them. So it really speaks, Patrick, to the partnership that you mentioned earlier on in the call. Now, you also mentioned the UI, and I will take a chance to sum up here for today's webinar for you all. If you would like to see what this actually looks like, get a look at the UI, get a feel for the service, we have a QR code right there, or you can link from veeam.com. It's easy to get to. And you can see how good the interface is and how much control and granular control your users and your admins have of backup and restore operations. I can say Veeam has 21 million mailboxes, 21 million users protected globally, more than any other data protection solution for Microsoft 365. And since we rolled out the first party backup solution, we have seen gigantic growth. Our customers, and Patrick, you see it too, have been super enthusiastic about it. That's all the time that we have for today. But I would like to say, please join us for a special edition of Veeam Industry Insights tomorrow at the same time, noon Eastern time. That is Wednesday, August 7th. That session will be unpacking the just released 2024 Gartner Magic Quadrant for Enterprise Backup and Recovery Solutions. And we will have our longtime co-hosts, Dave Russell, formerly of Gartner, and Jason Buffington here, both industry analyst experience, both with a lot of insight and contribution into the Gartner MQ ratings for Veeam, and they will be unpacking exactly what those ratings hold and what's involved. And on Thursday at our Tech Bites, we will have a special in-depth look, feature by feature, at the specific features that are discussed in this week's Magic Quadrant release. That'll be hosted by Rick Vanover, so please join us. A couple of very exciting sessions coming up this week. And that's all we have time for. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciated the talk today.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.